Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. It's me, Patty Lee. This is a crime bite, little extra, just to get up to speed on what's been going on with the Dylan Rounds case. So, just a quick little review for who is Dylan Rounds. Let me see if I can get that out of the frame. Things have been a little crazy. My setup is changing and I'm not sure how this is going. But if you keep an eye over here, you should be able to see the little graphics I have. So Dylan Rounds went missing around March 25th was the last time he was seen, but he was reported missing after the last time he was heard from, which was May 28th. His grandmother spoke to him in the morning. He said he was going to move his grain seed because it was going to rain. He was out on a remote farming site, 19 years old, had been very responsible, but it was very remote, very rural. Only a few older farmhand people type around and a squatter on the property, but they knew the gentleman. He had fired one of the farm workers, a Mr. Don H. The squatter was Jim Brenner. And there was another man who came and helped him sometime. His grandmother had called, I believe it was Chris, one of the other farmhands, and had called Don, asking, we haven't heard from Dylan. Have you seen him? There had been a rainstorm that day. They called on May 29th, is how the timeline goes. Then by May 30th, his parents went out there. So as you can see, Dylan, young man, farmer, loved to farm. He was farming a cash crop. I think it was alfalfa seeds or some seeds for feeding crops. And even though it was sort of desolate and dry, he was in Utah, right on the border of Nevada, outside, just north of Idaho, which is where he grew up. Well, his parents, Candace Cooley, and his father, Justin Rounds, came and started to look for him on May 30th. They got very upset because his truck was locked, which he never locked his truck. If you know farmers, you know they don't lock their stuff all the time because they're on the farm jumping in and out of vehicles, not a lot of other people around. So they were very concerned. And then, so they broke into the truck and they realized the seat was pulled way far up, as if a shorter person had driven it there. The truck was very clean and it had rained, so they were a little unsure as to had it been driven after the rain. It was weird because the wheel wells were full of mucked up dirt as if it had been driven, but yet the rest of the truck was spotless. So they were very concerned. They called immediately the sheriff, which was the Box Elder sheriff, came out. They looked around. After searching for a while, they did take a report, but they found a little bit of weight, a pair of boots. And Dylan only wore one boot at a time. To the fact that, if you go back in my playlist, you'll see when we first talked about the Dylan Rounds case, I wondered if he was on the spectrum because a lot of the description of him was that he was like hyper-focused on farming. He wasn't like other kids in high school. He didn't like to play video games or anything. He was hyper-focused on farming. That's all he wanted to do. His mom also said he only wore one pair of boots at a time until they wore like completely out. And it was such a thing that she kept them all like as he grew up. So from a developmental psychology perspective, which, hi, that's my background, that to me says maybe on the spectrum a little bit. Nothing wrong with that, but might be less aware of of social interactions. Maybe that's why he liked being on a farm. Not a lot of social interactions, and he could focus, really hyper-focus on what he loved. Regardless, his mom knew that that was trouble because he only wore one pair of boots at a time. He only had one pair of boots. He wasn't comfortable having other pairs, so like that's why he only wore one. So the fact that they were off his feet was troublesome. There's also a spot of blood on the boots. Now we have found out that that spot of blood was Dylan's, but at the time the mom just knew, oh my God, we found his boots. He's not wearing them. He just doesn't have his truck. Where did he go? Because he was about 5 miles from where his actual RV was. So he parked, somehow his he went to the shed, the grain shed. His truck was in one place. His boots were in another. Where was Dylan? The next we have in the timeline, the next big event. So Kansas starts talking to everybody. Sorry, I forgot to tell you what we're drinking with this crime bite. We're going to be drinking the drink that I had always paired with this case, which is a red sangria, because I paired it with this case because it's, if you can see at the bottom, it's by Round Barn. So that was enough for me to say it should be for Dylan. So let's drink to Dylan. Let's drink to the Cooley Rounds family for sticking with it, because our crime bite update of this crime is that after on June 18th, they found Dylan's phone in the pond. So behind me you will see I have sort of a little map that I grabbed from other screenshots showing where Dylan's boots were found. There's this big dirt pile. His grain truck was way over here by the shed. His camper site was here. And then in between, this is a squatting site by Brenner. This is a close-up of the farm area showing where Jim Brenner's campsite is, where he squatted. And you can see this is before, because later on this camper is removed. And see this shed? That will come up too. And there's the RV. So again, if we look from way far away, this is about a couple miles here. The granary is over here. This is the shed and the area where Brenner was squatting. Again, another picture of where now his RV was removed. But as you can see, that's where Dylan's boots were found. So the phone is found. The mom is concerned. The only people on the property or near the property are the farmhands, it's Don Hatley and the squatter, Jim Brenner. Don was fired after having a disagreement with Dylan, so that was a little bit of a concern. But Dylan had also mentioned that he gave a ride to somebody, and his mom remembered that story, that it was sort of a haggard man. They thought maybe it was this Chase Ventura, but we found out later it was not. But at this beginning then, so nobody's really taking everything so seriously. In fact, I believe the boots were kept in the back of the police cruiser for like 6 days before they were even tested. They did think maybe Dylan had walked away. There wasn't a lot of urgency at the beginning except for the mom. She had a lot of urgency, and the dad also, but the mom really, she was talking to every YouTuber. She was dealing with the fallout that we see in a lot of these cases where people talk about the people that come forward first. So they were talking about the parents' marriage, and maybe the upbringing there was a problem with his upbringing. There was a lot of chitter-chatter about, well, the family didn't really like her, and there was an acrimonious divorce, which had nothing to do at all with Dylan's disappearance. But the mom kept going. So on June 18th, the phone was found. I believe by this time the FBI were involved as well, helping as a support to Box Elder. The phone had pinged. It had never left the property. And the phone is part of this big update today. So that's when it was found. On June 23rd then they arrest Jim Brenner for being a felon who possessed firearms. They'd gone out. He had asked Don Hatley to please hold some firearms for him because he didn't want them taken away. They were very expensive. This had happened to him before. And a lot of people, I guess, with past issues move out west and move to these like small areas where there's not a lot of people around because they'd rather be where others are not. And we don't want to automatically assume they're suspicious. But giving weapons to somebody else to hold because, you know, the parents are looking around and everybody's there is a little suspicious. So the police had looked into that. They find the phone. I'm not sure how much they saw on the phone right then, but then Jim Brennan is arrested on these firearm charges for having these firearms that they found that his friend had been holding. So this is now January, February, March, April, May, June. So about a month it takes them to get this all together. Then we don't hear a lot. We hear only from Candace Cooley. She and Dylan's dad, Justin, they hired a drone group, Midwest EquiSearch helped, and also the people that helped them fly around and also do some scanning was, I believe it was called Heavy D, a YouTuber who donated his time and all this money to go out and do this special radar that Twyla from Midwest EquiSearch, Dennis Rader is the head of that, and shout out to Duty Ron, who covered all of this and is a liaison with the EquiSearch group. His channel is called Duty Ron. If you like a police perspective, I would check it out. He's got great experts in every area that you would want. Searching, forensics, detectives, everything that are experts. Highly recommend Duty Run. So, and he has kept up with this case. So what we know now is the timeline is that the phone is found. So here's the pond. I have 2 pictures of it. A YouTuber went out and actually filmed right after the crime, and then filmed, and I don't know how he got on the property because it was on Dylan's property. So the phone never pinged off the property. It pinged where the grain shed, where Dylan last talked to his grandmother. Then it pinged at Jim Brenner's. Then it pinged back at Dylan's camper, and then at Jim Brenner's, I believe, and then at the pond. So they found it in the pond, and it was found on June 18th. The pond was drained a little bit, but there is a source of water that feeds it. So there is still some water in it, but as you can see, much deeper right after the crime, and then they drained it, and now it just has a little water left. And that was kind of one of the best things about that area is that he did have clean, fresh water on his property, and it was something that other people wanted. And that was something that they talked about maybe in the beginning was, like, did someone want his property? What he had 600 acres, which Candace Cooley, the law enforcement, and all the volunteers, that they searched that with drones on foot looking for Dylan. Dylan is still missing. So the phone was recovered. It had a time lapse, and I'm gonna raise a glass to Gen Z. Why Gen Z? Gen X asks why Gen Z. Well, why? Because they know their technology. We saw technology help find and give clues in the Delphi case with the Snapchat video that one of the girls was quick enough to take on the Mohan High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana. In this case, it hasn't been said specifically, but it appears as if Dylan was smart enough to start a time-lapse video. So I looked up on your iPhone. A time-lapse is compressed to like a 30-second video, and you can take up to, but no more than like 2 hours of video. And this time-lapse video, we found out Friday, showed Jim Brenner cleaning a gun covered with his arms and his shirt in blood. That allowed the police, they did go back out, they found the shirt, they tested it, it did have Dylan's blood on it. So I don't know how long it took from June 18th, but we do know he was arrested on June 23rd on other charges, so he's been locked up this whole time. But to fix that video and then find the shirt to test it for, and I think it came back mixed DNA with him and Dylan. So I just have a little, if you care to read about what you do to use your time lapse, maybe you know on your iPhone, but you have to open the camera, select time lapse mode. Then you set up your iPhone where you want it to capture a scene in motion. You tap the record button to start recording, and then you have to tap it again to stop it recording. And so I posed the question up here. Did Dylan know that Brenner was going to be a problem, was going to attack him in some way? Did he approach him when he was in his green truck trying to get his seed covered after he spoke with his grandmother? Did he notice Jim Brenner walking up, maybe with a gun, maybe just aggravated? Did he start a time lapse on his phone? Because what this does is it says a 30-second time lapse is created with, if you have a certain time frame, about 5 seconds between shots, and it takes about an hour, 1.2 hours. So, and then another thing I read said it could be up to, depending on how the settings you use, it could do it up to, I believe, and not more than 2 hours. So if Dylan was smart enough to start the time lapse, I can't believe it was Brenner himself who decided to time lapse and how he wanted to film himself. I think what had happened was maybe Dylan had put his phone perhaps in his shirt pocket, and so it was facing out, and Brenner, being 61 and maybe not the brightest bulb, didn't know what it was doing, and it just did it for as long as it possibly could, catching the cleanup. Did it catch anything else? We don't know, but again, let's pour out a drink. I'm going to drink this Round Barn Sangria wine, but pour one out for Dylan, because I think he, like the girls in Delphi, was bright enough to help do something to solve his own crime. Which is pretty darn fabulous. So James Brenner was arrested and charged 3/3/23. That's right. Friday, March 3rd, he was charged by the Box Elder Police with 2 counts. 1, aggravated murder. It is a first-degree felony, and abuse or desecration of a human body, a third-degree felony. One of the things that Dylan's mom saw and his father was that while they were out there the first couple days, that when I believe it was the first day when they found the boots, they were noticing the truck wasn't right. They saw James Brenner, Jim, in a shed next to where he was squatting, and he was like, he said it was just cleaning out. Maybe it was actually by the grain truck, but it was in near a big shed, and he moved the grain. I believe he moved the big granary that had the seeds out of the way. He went in there and he took out 4 bags of garbage and put them in his pocket, his pickup, and took off. And Candace always thought, because then they looked in the shed later and it was still full of garbage. So why those 4 bags? What was in it? I'm sure that when the trial comes, we'll find out more. But was that Dylan? Was the shirt in there? We don't know. But the fact he did it right under the nose of the cops, because the cops are like, oh yeah, there's that he's just a, harmless old squatter. Just, he's been here on the property. Ma'am, do you know him? Yes. Has he been on the property? Yes, he's lived here for so long. He's squatting, blah, blah, blah. So, unfortunate, though, that somebody's able to remove anything from a property where someone is missing, especially if they themselves really don't belong on the property. The last thing I'd like to say is, if you can see up here, Candace Cooley started this last year. Dylan's birthday was August 1st. Dylan always loved to watch the sunflowers grow over the summer. They would be big by the time it was his birthday. He loved sunflowers, and so his mom remembers planting them with him for him, and she asked that while we were all at the time looking for Dylan still, and he was missing, to please plant sunflowers in his memory. In fact, I keep a sunflower as part of my set. Sometimes it's over there. I brought it over here now because we do want to remember Dylan. So Dylan would be 20 now, but it is believed that he was probably unalived that day in May by James Brenner, allegedly, so far according to the arrest. So if you would like to, now is the time when in your grocery stores and any feed stores or hardware stores, they sell seeds. And sunflowers happen to be annuals. There is one variety, I believe, that's a perennial, but most are annuals. And now is the time to germinate seeds in like little seed pots, put them in your window, and get them ready to put in the ground as soon as whenever your area, the hard frosts are over and you can start planting. Plant them in a very sunny, south-facing area, and, you know, send pictures and put them up in honor of Dylan Rounds, and tag Candace Cooley. She would appreciate it. It's a wonderful memory. So that is my crime bite update for Dylan Rounds, and his brightness that even in a time of uncertainty, he was probably smart enough to turn on his phone. And what can we learn from that? Your phone can document things. Don't forget it when it's on. If you get any hinky feeling, turn on your time lapse. That's a great thing to do. It does drain the battery, but if it can go for an hour or two, you can capture whatever might happen to you, and you just start it and it goes until the end. That's pretty smart. If you have an Android like I do, there's probably another similar type feature, but if you have an iPhone, like many people do, Dylan taught us a wonderful lesson. I believe he saved and solved his own crime with the help of his parents. So also, to Candace Cooley, to Justin Rounds, your tenacity, especially Candace, man, she got so much crap on social media, as people do, and you know that's bad when people pile on. She was really the spearhead to keep this investigation ongoing. So Candace, as one mom to another, I'm sorry you lost your son, but you are an inspiration to all mothers everywhere who need to remember that you have to keep going no matter what. So I am going to be planting sunflowers. I'll take some pictures and post them. I hope you will too. I'm Patty Lee, your dyslexic armchair detective. Please like, please subscribe. I'll be doing more crime bites. I'll be doing my weekly updates. And until then, I will see you later. Bye.